Start soon. Recording. Okay, cool. Welcome to the Quadrant Community Call of Tuesday, May the 7th, 2024. And we have a whole list of items to talk through. So let's get going. And the first one on the list is Peter on upstream docs. You take it.
Okay, thank you. So what I wanted to highlight is where we are currently with the upstream docs and how we should deal with them. First, I would like to thank Jason for implementing the version select, which effectively mean we now have staging docs and production docs, which is great. We can use that for testing. Um, so that should point to main. New docs should currently appear, and there can be breaking changes. Right, we will fix it as we go. And then once we get to the release, we should uh, push everything into the release branches, and they should be published as well. So this is how I think it should work. One thing I'm not really clear is how do we update currently the stable docs or the release docs. I'm not sure if I can get any clarification on that.
I had to do that this morning, so I just created a PR against the branch.
Okay, so it should be also straightforward, right? But it's manual, right?
It's manual, but
Okay.
I think there's probably a choice to make, which is, does this belong on main as well? And if it does, merge it to main and cherry pick it to the release branch as well. Or
Right,
if
yeah.
it's something specific to just that release, then just update that branch.
Yeah, thank you. That makes sense. For testing while we do a release, the only thing we need to do is, well, use the dev channel, but replace all the references to main with the actual release candidate. And that's it. That's how it currently works. That's how I think it should work. And we should hopefully have a nicer time doing the documentation in the future. Over to you, Thomas.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. Egoski, Quadrant Wasm server component. Dun, dun, dun.
Okay. This is a new.
Your volume is rather low, I think, at least compared to
Really?
Peter's.
Peter's voice is strong because he's a man, and only half. So, quadrant component, new quadrant component. Let me introduce to you a new quadrant component. I call it Wasm server. I'm very bad at naming things, so I'm very. Any other suggestion is very welcome. For the context, let me get you through a short story, which is I was working on the Envoy gateway integration. Long story short, okay, I was working on that, and then I learned that that Wasm binaries, Wasm modules being released and distributed using Docker images, OCI. There are two sub standards. One is OCI, and the other is a kind of it's another adaptation, which is a Docker image. This is something not directly supported by Envoy or Envoy Gateway as well. This is something that I think it's Solo.io and Istio. They came up with some standard, they documented it, so you can distribute your Wasm modules using the Docker images. So when I was working on Envoy Gateway, I learned that. Then I had to get the Wasm binary, the one that we compiled from Quadrant's Wasm binary. I needed to get that using either pushing the file into the Envoy's container or some URL HTTP service where the Wasm binary is being served. And by coincidence, at the same time, Alex raised a concern very rightfully, according to me, is that at runtime, as the thing as we have now, at runtime, the Istio controller is going to fetch the Docker image with the WASM from external source, which is quite obviously something not wanted. This is something undesirable, and we want to have, especially these plugins that are in the data plane, and they are really rules for the traffic. You want to have them control manner, and you want them to be served within the cluster. Yes, correct.
Yeah, so it coming from Quay is a risk, like you said, but I wonder, like you can run a registry in the cluster, so you could load the image into the on cluster registry instead, perhaps, as an alternative.
Theoretically, yes, and that works for deployments, Kubernetes deployments, and things like that. But the Envoy, sorry, in this case, Istio control plane, doing that, I'm not sure if you can do that. And if you can, there will be a need for certificates and things like that. Theoretically, I would say yes, but you will need to load in advance.
It might not be a bad option. It might not be a bad option to document that anyway. It's an option to say, like, if you want to have the image come from your local cluster.
You have to, yes, and you have to think on the upgrades as well. How will we manage the upgrade? You will need to, but yes, theoretically there is this door here. So the story is that I needed some. What needed? It will be very useful. Some service, HTTP service, serving the WASM binary. By the way, I tried to push the WASM binary into the GitHub assets, only for the Envoy gateway integration, and it turns that the GitHub returns a 302 redirect, so Envoy doesn't follow redirects. So you need something that is direct. So in the end, I needed some HTTP service, static file server. And this is what it is, the Kuadrant WASM module. Not going into much detail on the implementation details, but the workflow is as I draw in the diagram. The Kuadrant operator or controller needs to get the checksum SHA-256. This is because this is a requirement for Envoy. When you set a WASM filter in Envoy, you need to check the SHA checksum. The Istio control plane is doing that for us. So, but you can also set the SHA-256 in the WASM plugin. So Istio can also do the double check, the double verification. So it downloads and verifies that the checksum is as you set. So the Kuadrant controller gets the checksum, asking the WASM server. Then it configures the WASM plugin. The WASM plugin notifies the Istio control planes. Well, it's the other way around, but well, anyway, whatever you want to see it. And then Istio goes and fetches the WASM binary from the WASM server, and then gets the binary, the file, pushes into the Envoy. It's mounted. If you check the deployment, it's mounted in a config map, or in a I think it's a config map or a secret, and then sets up the WASM filter. So and this all happens within the Kubernetes cluster. There are two PRs for implementing this. One is in the WASM server. Sorry, one is in the WASM machine repo where the source code of the WASM binary lives. So I created a new workflow. So instead of one is for creating the Docker image, and the other is for creating the WASM server, which is it's very simple. It's an Nginx server with a binary in the same container. So and two endpoints, one for getting the SHA and the other for getting the binary, the byte array. If you go, Thomas, if you go to the Nginx conf, you will see those two. Well, actually, there is one. No, it should be. No, I remove. It's only one endpoint, which is getting the binary. For the checksum, I did otherwise. I'm not going into the detail now, but because it will take too long. So this is the idea. This is the idea that I wanted to present. It's open for discussion, obviously. As Peter, the first comment from Peter was, why do we need a new component if we can serve directly from the Kuadrant operator, which is also an HTTP server? Indeed, it is. It's an HTTP server for metrics. It's an HTTP server for the health endpoint, and we could add a new one for that. The only, it's not something I discard, but the only thing I don't like it is that you need to tell the Kuadrant controller, the Kuadrant operator, you need to tell its own location. You need to say, hey, you are living in this namespace, and this is there is a service called blah blah blah, which is the one for getting your WASM binary, and it needs this information for configuring the WASM plugin or the Envoy gateway filter or whatever. So for me, it's cleaner, easier to manage, easier to resolve the upgrade path if you have some extra component, which is again something very simple, an Nginx with a binary with a static file HTTP service.
How does it help with the upgrade path? Is that because it's shipped with the version of Kuadrant that WASM plugin supports?
Because in the upgrade path, the operator will be aware. But in both, I think I think it's because the operator upgrades something that is being deployed and upgrades it to the next version. So if it's in the operator itself, the binary is being served from the operator. The upgrade path is direct. That's true. But on the other hand, you need to upgrade the WASM plugin in order to do the rollout of Envoy and doing that. It's I think it's easier for the upgrade path because it's just yet another component. But yeah, it could be. I mean, I don't see any blocker doing in both ways now. But for me, I think it's cleaner having a specific component. Which, by the way, we already have one component, which is the WASM machine. We call it WASM machine. It's a Docker image. So it's not. It's just we change the way we release, we distribute this component.
Okay. So the component is installed when you install Kuadrant. It installs the WASM server, which serves the version of the WASM plugin that is shipped with that particular version of Quadrant.
Yeah.
So when you upgrade, the WASM that comes with the upgrade will be the right version.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much of an issue with it, I guess, but I wonder, like, yeah, is the main thing that it's trying to solve is serving it from an external registry? Is that like the main reason, or is the upgrade piece like a really important piece, you feel? Or
For me, it's twofold. One is the security concern, which I give you that we could somehow reduce the security doing what you said. I didn't do that, but I think it could be done, which is, again, it's loading the image in the cluster registry and telling WASM, Istio or Envoy filter to load from there.
Yeah.
But for me, that's one, and the other is supporting for the Envoy gateway support.
Oh, okay.
Because Envoy gateway, as of today, doesn't load a Docker image. As of today, maybe tomorrow. Yes, I don't have news about that, but because this is more or less the idea.
Okay, I missed that part. Sorry, I wasn't understanding that part.
No,
okay,
no
so
problem. No problem.
Envoy gateway won't load an image, so this is a way to, one, improve security, two, support Envoy gateway, and three, make the upgrade a shippable unit, right? As in, you ship a unit of Quadrant, you get all the bits that you need for that version. Okay, that makes more sense now.
Alex, you said, well, this makes it runtime. Sorry, I lost context. What do you mean?
Yeah, sorry, I missed the beginning of this. This wasn't server. That's now a runnable Nginx container that needs to run somewhere. So that changes the way that, right? Before it wasn't a runnable thing. Like it was just a container image that we would pull. So anyways, my 2 cents, I don't feel that it's a good idea to add runtime components when it's not, like, certainly not for what that does. I think that's sad. It's just wasting money and resources for I missed the reason. And then I would add that I still think that because the WASM module is, I'm not sure how to best put it, like, it's really tied to your Quadrant operator, in the sense that that's, so in case it's not clear for everyone, the thing that configures it is that thing, and they need to agree on the language they speak, i.e. the config of the WASM shim. I still believe that the Quadrant operator makes for a better home for this because of those two things. One, their life cycle. Well, no, sorry. One, why add a runtime component for that needs to run, if all goes well, like only for a very short amount of time? And two, we're redecoupling things in their life cycles now, right? The Quadrant operator and the WASM shim belong together. I think we can fix that dependency with the SHA-256, right? If it gets in, because that's another way of saying we know exactly what we want to run. And the Quadrant, you could argue that has it, but the life cycles are decoupled now. Meaning that if your Quadrant operator restarts, your WASM server hasn't yet restarted to the newest version, undefined behavior.
But can I? Yeah. I don't agree on that the life cycles are decoupled, because it's the WASM server. The Quadrant operator is the owner of the WASM server, this running service, and it will manage the life cycle of the WASM server. So when there is a new version of the WASM module, it will update the WASM server.
Yeah, you make them a dependency, but they're nonetheless decoupled, right?
What?
Maybe
Yes.
I'm very
it's
picky about wording
decoupled,
here.
but it's decoupled, but one is the owner of this, so the one rules and says, "Hey, upgrade." Yeah, could
Works
fail,
for me.
and then you
Same
have
argument then.
some issue. Yeah, and regarding resources and consumption, I don't think that's an issue at all. It's a little service,
Yeah,
it's a service
that's a
that
generic. I guess that
the
becomes
consumption will be zero, and it's
well, it's never
you
zero.
could argue that somebody else could fetch the binary. So maybe I don't know if this is an issue, security issue, which could. I mean,
That I don't think so. I think if you have that security issue, you have more security issues in your cluster, anyways. But yeah, that's a generic thing. I don't agree with the premise. Just throw more containers and runtimes at everything. I think that's a broken promise. But hey, like I'm willing to be wrong on this. I know that's a Kubernetes way. Obviously, it makes cloud providers very happy because they're charging you. So, but I don't think it's a good game.
but this is I give you the word correct in a second. Yeah. As you said, Alex, this is Kubernetes way of doing things, and I don't think that an operator, a controller, should be serving assets like this. My reasoning behind this statement is just because I believe it, because it's patterns. The controller is a watcher of cluster resources and reaction events. There is some endpoint for metrics, and there is some endpoint for health status, but I don't think it should be serving WASM or serving a website of Kuadrant or serving something like that. It should be a different component. Correct.
Yeah. So I think I would also say that if we feel like this is the way that we need to do things in order to work with Envoy Gateway, that I would also want to kind of put it into the Quadrant operator. Having it as a separate component means that it's another component, like what Alex already points out, that it's another component that's running, but it's also like another component that people have to monitor, right? Because if that's crashing for some reason, then maybe your gateway is not getting configured. So
right, yes.
And I kind of think like this. I think it makes sense in the Envoy Gateway scenario because it doesn't support any other way. But I think I would probably emphasize. I'm restating what I've already said, and I don't sort of want to hammer it on. But like, I'll probably emphasize loading the image for other people, other users into the registry, because that is also a server. Yeah, so I think that's where I would land on that. Is have, if we need this endpoint, have it in the Quadrant operator. That's kind of where my head is at this point.
Peter?
All right, so I agree with. Okay, can you hear me or not?
Yes.
Okay, good, awesome. My 2 cents are that yes, I agree with what Alex and Greg said. I also do not think we need separate component just for this. I would also add some mid-ground. If we want it to be an Nginx running container, could we add it into the Quadrant operator path so at least it's tightly coupled together? But other than that, I think just Quadrant operator serving one file is completely fine.
Okay, I think well, that's it. Let's continue the discussion on the PR, but I think there is kind of quorum here. So if there is anything, I mean, unless there is something new, I will try to implement it in the operator, as you say.
Unless, I mean, the minorities are sometimes correct, so maybe you have a better reason for not doing it like
No,
that. Did you consider
sure. I mean, I'm sure I'm correct, and others are wrong, but I cannot convince you otherwise. So,
no, but like my question was, did you consider it doing it like that, or did?
Yeah,
just...
in the beginning.
Right.
In the beginning, it was firstly it was Limitador doing this.
Okay.
And then it was the Kuadrant operator. I started looking at how the operator can configure Wasm, saying Istio, saying, "Hey, come to me and grab the binary from me." So yes, it can be done, but we need to add some. We need to add few environment variables from the manifest. Takes the well, it can be done.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
But yeah.
Sorry, multitasking here at the same time. So sorry if I ended up repeating something that somebody else already said. But if you need some reference on how to reuse the Kuadrant operator's HTTP server to add this additional custom endpoint, we did something very similar in Arduino, which is also based on controller runtime, right? So controller runtime comes with all the tools you need to register some custom endpoints and to serve HTTP requests in general.
Okay, thanks for the tip. Yeah, I will have a look.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember I did something similar with Campbell and Kuadrant back in the day for the developer portal POC. So as well, I have like some archive repo that you can take a look.
I put it into the chat there, but I think as a general rule as well, if we can avoid kind of putting utilities like this into components that are doing things at runtime, as in the request flow, and more into the operators is probably better, because if the operator happens to crash, it's not necessarily going to be the end of the world, whereas if the limiter is being brought down, it's going to have a direct impact, or Arduino, for instance.
Okay. I'm going to move on. Next item. Better. Bundling gateway API.
Right.
As in bundling gateway API implementation, or what do you mean?
No, not implementation, just the APIs themselves.
Okay. Yes.
The reason why I'm bringing it up, it's just a proposal. I don't know if it's even viable, if we can do that just to get it in the wild. Is, well, we had a discussion yesterday about releasing, right, and that our Kuadrant bot is of course crashing in those test environment, because, well, we depend on APIs that cannot be ever specified in the operator dependencies. Wow, and we have one particular API that's never specified. We expect the user to install it, and at the same time, we depend heavily on the implementation of the specific version and stuff like that. And that's Gateway API, which is not provided by anyone, not even Istio. And while I think it doesn't make sense for Istio to provide it, I think based on our coupling to the specific version, I would say it makes sense to bundle it if we want to.
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking about this one myself since yesterday when we hit that. Actually, sorry, you go, because I didn't raise my hand and I just assumed I could talk, so we'll go for it.
No problem. No problem at all. I just would like to point out that this is something that we had a meeting about yesterday. It's good that we are having this in the open now. And this particular idea of bundling the gateway API resources into our own bundle file was also considered yesterday. But maybe somebody can refresh my mind on, I think somebody said something about a possible conflict in case another component also tries to register the same APIs. Yeah, because
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Actually, there is some mechanisms, priority-based mechanisms for resolution. So the OLM can resolve and say where those CRDs are coming from in case there are multiple sources.
So I can see the reason for doing it, and it sort of makes sense from a testing the operator point of view. But I do worry about it a little bit. One was like the different versions of it potentially, but the second on like because it's a cluster level thing, and it's not really our CRD. And the second part was, is it an unexpected outcome when you install Kuadrant that suddenly Gateway API is actually installed onto your cluster rather than you as a user specifically installing those CRDs? I realize that like we can't do a whole lot without Gateway API, but I'm not sure that it would be like an expected outcome that like you install Kuadrant and Gateway API is now on your cluster versus, oh, you need Gateway API. Okay, I'll install that, and now I'll choose to use Kuadrant because I want to use Gateway API. So I guess my question would be, maybe we can solve this a different way. And like, is there some kind of pre-test hook or anything like that that would allow us to trigger the install of the CRDs before the operator tests were run? Or I can't believe that we're the only ones that have ever hit this problem. So I'm wondering if there's some kind of option there. Yeah, I just worry a little bit about installing a global CRD that really isn't our CRD.
Gateway API, sorry, Envoy Gateway is doing that. When you install, at least I know using the Helm chart, when you install Helm chart for the Envoy Gateway version 1.0.0, Gateway API is part of the bundle.
So this is going to probably sound a little bit strange because I just said it's not our CRD, but I could kind of get around it when you're installing something like Envoy Gateway because it's
a provider.
It's effective, yeah, right. We're not a gateway provider, so if we were providing a gateway, I could sort of get my head around it, but because we're not, it just feels out of place.
Yeah, I kind of agree with the point that it's not our CRD and we shouldn't be the one doing that. I kind of agree it should be the gateway provider that does that. I don't think Istio will ever do that because, well, Istio never, well, it doesn't have a hard dependency on it, right? It's only a small part of thing of it is doing, and it wouldn't make sense to install it as part, for example, as part of Sail because, well, they can install plethora of versions, and each of those Istio versions depend on different gateway API or support different gateway API. So that's why I think maybe it makes sense for us because, well, gateway providers won't be doing it, or gateway provider that we are currently using on GoNG.
I don't know if that was said before, but the way I understand it, this is not necessarily a Kuadrant issue, but an operator lifecycle manager issue, right? That is the reason why we're discussing this. Right.
I would actually argue it would improve user experience overall as well. Like, I don't think this fix would, yes, of course, it would help the test because that's how we discovered it. I think it would also make sense for the whole thing because, well, Kuadrant won't work and won't do anything without Gateway API. We have very hard dependency on that.
Yeah, I guess my point being is that this is an implication of the method we use to ship, right, and then deliver the product, I want to say. So is that something that we want to reconsider? I mean, some other ways, other methods
How would, for example, using Helm fix that? It would still have the same problem.
I don't want you to reopen the conversation. I'm just saying that.
But no. Just mean I don't think it's a product of how we are installing it. I think it's just right. We don't have any dependency on it at all anywhere, while we have a very hard dependency on it, like code wise. Also, I'm completely fine with not doing it, right?
I just think there has to be some alternative to having to bundle it into our CSV. Oh, sorry, Alex, your hand.
Okay, I think it's
yeah. So on the, I think I heard that it would make the overall user experience better. I actually disagree with that. It would, if we would come with an actual, what I call like engine included, right? If we would actually provide, like the fact that CRDs are present or not, honestly, like no user cares about that. What they care about is configuring a gateway, right? So that's what people need to be able doing. And there is HTTP rails and so forth, right? And the fact that this goes through CRs and such as CRDs needs to be installed is just a side effect of that. But that's the user's story, right? So I think what would make the overall experience better is maybe, and I don't know if that's an option, but if we could have, when you install through OLM, a way for those CRDs obviously to be there so that the thing can start always or whatever, but mostly that actually a user can do their job. So is there like a conditional way of saying, okay, that's not there, then we take upon ourselves to get Envoy Gateway running there or whatever, right? As far as I know, there is none through the OLM dependency graph, but is there another way of achieving that? That I could see, right? When somebody types whatever they type, OLM install Kuadrant, right? What they want is be able to apply policies to gateways / routes / whatever. That's the whole thing that they want to do, right? So maybe that's something that should be discussed. But like honestly, this OLM thing, yeah, well, that's a different problem. And if what we're trying to do cannot be solved with OLM as it stands today, then I think we should get the discussion going with those folks to see if we can, what would be the preferred way of doing what we're doing. Because as Craig said, right, if only because of Gateway API or whatever, right, that's it. There's a use case for that out there, right? For things that don't make it inside GA directly, do you want to have OLM support for those things? So how do we support that use case? That's one. But then if we're talking about the user experience, it's not about the CRDs being present or not. It's about getting a gateway API provider running on that cluster. And I think just having the CRDs there is a broken promise, right? Austin, yes, you can like quote unquote deploy a gateway. Well, you cannot. You can have a gateway API resource there that nobody will act upon. So
yeah, at the same time, you can wonder how many people are going to start using Gateway API through Kuadrant, right? It's like, I mean, I would say more logically, you're trying things with Gateway API through some implementation of it, and then Kuadrant is something that you will use to make that better or to add behavior to it. Should we really cater to the case where you start the whole Gateway API story through Kuadrant? I'm not saying we should not, but I'm not sure how.
I think based on the Gateway API, like how it's new, I actually think that someone is trying out Gateway API because Kuadrant offers these cool features. It's actually a reasonable use case we might have.
Okay.
But because nobody is using Gateway API yet, so doesn't matter from which way they come.
Okay, Fair enough. But then I agree with Alex that like the actual improvement is there to like, I think we used to call that with the engine. We should also ship the engine, like the whole full Monty, right?
Yeah.
And not just the API, but the implementation.
Oh yeah, 100%. Alex's proposal was much better idea.
But it's also more work, and then which
Yeah.
one, and well, yeah, there's a whole
Exactly.
whole story there. If okay with you, I want to move on. Otherwise, we're not going to make it in time.
100%.
Thanks, Craig. Regularly publishing to operator catalogs.
Yes. So we only publish to the community catalogs, like when we do a point release, and I'm wondering if there's an alternative where we're pushing to the community catalogs more regularly, so that we're like continuously publishing there, so that we're seeing these types of issues like the ones that we hit in 0.7 before we get to that point. There's some thoughts that I had around what might cause issues with that, but I'll pause there because people already have their hands up. So, Alex.
Yeah, I have. So people know that I'm a real big fan of CI for real and continuously integrating stuff. And that, so I came to a few realizations while doing this. And it's sort of not a follow-up question to what you were proposing. It's to what extent do we want to bring that, right? So I try to educate myself. So also everybody that knows me knows I'm not a huge Golang fan. And I'm a bit confused about what we're integrating as well. So meaning, should we do go get all our own dependencies on every quadrant operator build run, for instance, to upgrade to the latest whatever points, and what even latest means for DNS, limitador, quadrant, and I think that Authorino operators or not, and if that pushed and tested for and all that, I'm not really sure what we are trying to CIing, if that's a verb. So anyways, I think I'm broadening the scope of your question. But it's a bit unclear to me what we're CIing.
Yeah, because I guess the end result is you end up in a catalog, but we're continuously testing ourselves against the tests that are run by that catalog's gatekeepers. Peter?
All right. So I think I agree with the sentiment. We should definitely release nightlies in some way. The problem is when we do it to Operator Hub, we are not releasing Kuadrant Operator nightly. We are releasing every operator nightly.
Mm-hmm.
And that means we first need to create PRs for all of the components for the nightly build. Then only after those are merged, we can create Kuadrant ones, which will depend on them, as far as I know. Which means that if we cannot bundle, if we are currently struggling with doing it once a while, I think do it all automatically is going to be a big pain in the ass. That's well, I would really like it. I don't, with the way how we structure dependencies and that each of them is released automatically, I think we are going to run into a lot of issues.
So there is a fair bit of overhead, I imagine, then. I think Alex's point is valid around where's the value of the integration. But I guess, is there any way that we could improve to avoid these types of issues that we hit? I mean,
so it's, sorry, I guess jumped the line. So what Peter described is correct. Plus, they seem to be races as well in the observability stuff. So sadly enough, I think what Peter is saying, yes. So I think we should try to get to that. That'd be awesome. But let's be honest, yes, it's going to be a pain somewhere. When I pushed the first release on Friday for Quadrant Operator, it actually failed because of DNS or Limitador. I don't remember which one, but supposedly not being released, the dependency not being there, even though the thing got merged. And let's be honest, it wasn't a second thing, right? You create we're talking about multiple minutes here. So back again to what what's the value? What are we trying to test out that and then a bit to the same point I was making before, maybe trying to reach that based on what's there is just too much work and not worth it. Another question that makes me wonder is, are we abusing this in having this large dependency tree resolved by OLM and hoping for all this to work? I don't know, but maybe. I guess.
I know I already said this before, but I think I should raise again the question is why do we want to deploy using OLM? OLM provides lifecycle management with constraints and capabilities. Until we reach V100 GA, I don't see a value.
For upstream, especially, do you think it risky? Like
I was testing in Envoy Gateway and it was Helm installed, done.
Yeah.
Helm install, Helm, for you that don't know, it's a system a little bit smarter than Kustomize. A little bit.
Yeah, I used OLM and Anger to set up like the engineering clusters as well, and it has caused me endless pain. And it's still causing me pain right now. It's still currently flip-flopping backwards and forwards about something wrong with one of the subscriptions, and I have no idea what.
So I mean, we don't need this. The upgrade pad is broken. I mean, if somebody installs 06 and tries to upgrade to 07, I didn't try, but I think I will bet it's not working. So in that regard, we only want fresh installs and things like that for now. Now, once we reach certain level of stability, GA V1 or pre V1, then yes, we could pay the toll of all the pain having to release using OLM, but then you get the payback. I mean, all the capabilities, all the user interface, everything, all the checks for upgrading, check of the OpenShift version or Kubernetes version, things like that.
Yeah,
some of them are yeah.
For community releases, I really don't see the value, particularly when you're not looking to support upgrading between versions, like you said, right? I'm just not seeing. Well, one, it's probably a little bit of a barrier to entry because it's yet another thing that you have to install onto your Kubernetes cluster before you can install Kuadrant. And two, it causes a lot of headaches, right? So yeah, we do have to use it though elsewhere.
It will be much easier to do CI or not CI, CD obviously using some manifest based release or Helm chart, which is kind of manifest with a nice wrapper, than in OLM.
Peter?
All right. I was for a long time very strong proponent of OLM. I haven't even, and I forced you to do it a few years ago. On the other hand, I definitely have to agree. Right now, it's right. I don't think OLM provides enough value if we are not supporting upgrades and stuff like that. So it's just pain in the ass right now. I would probably try doing it like a best effort way. Like if we have a release, I would probably try to release it in the operator hub, but I wouldn't just spend too much time on it and probably look into the other ways of doing it. Agi?
I think it's fair to ask that, let's say we do drop OLM releases for now. Are we just transferring the problem to somebody else if we do that? Because I know this is Kuadrant upstream, but we are right at the corner of also having to support productization of that internally.
I think productization already resolved most of the problems we are dealing with. Like what we are, every automation we are going to do, I don't think is going to be usable in the productized way. I think there's going to be a lot of different ways of doing it, and it's much more, how to say it, robust implementation, I would say. And I hope it will alleviate a lot of the issues we currently do have.
Yeah, I'm thinking on the tests that those operators, those Red Hat provided operators, also have to go through. I don't think that they are that different from the ones that we need to pass for the community operators, plus others. I'm just saying that we're risking on failing on some other end. Maybe that's fine. I'm just saying it.
Yeah, I was about to say maybe, and maybe I think those tests also add value, right? But right now, I think they're slow us down. Like again, being able to support like an actual upgrade from a running cluster in OpenShift, where Sail gets installed and you get all the stuff that you need, is a different ball game than running in, what is it, Kiwi, I think, whatever, and hoping for those things to pass, and then we get into the upgrade path that you guys figured out this morning, and I didn't follow up too closely, so I must say I don't know, but this whole skipping one version and so forth, like what would we pay all that price, on a very regular basis? Certainly now when we're fine breaking backwards compatibility and so forth. So I think instead of saying we're moving the problem to somebody else, I think we're kicking the bucket down the road, but it is fine, I think, because we're not there yet, right? We're trying to support things, and we're not even doing that, by the way. We're trying to work around the tests so that they pass, so that we're happy and we can merge it, and they don't even provide the value that they're supposed to provide, because there's no way for you to upgrade anyways a running cluster from one version to another. So once we have that and we need to support that, then yes. So let's say we're making this a problem for future us, which generally I'm not a big fan of. But in this case, let's only address those problems when there are actually going to be those problems, and not now when we deliberately decided to not address those problems. So it's kind of a weird split brain kind of way going about stuff. So I guess what I'm saying is I think you're correct in what you're saying, Guy, but it's also fine.
I've seen other teams like hacking around as well. Like the Sail team were creating a channel per release, so they didn't have to do any upgrades. They'd create a new channel for each night, because then they wouldn't hit the upgrade problem. But then when you go to install there's like 450 channels to pick from.
Yeah, just to add to the list of examples, Craig, and sorry, Didier, I know you have your hand raised. Open Data Hub is also installing partially with OLM. They also have their own mechanism for installing other dependencies that you cannot install through OLM.
So I'll just continue on Alex's comments. The last 48 hours have been hectic and been like a pita. It's not only about the documentation, it's like not maintained, it is archived. All the links that they pointed to archive repos that the documentation is like super old. Of course, they're maintaining and they're adding new tests that they are not documented. So we need to add, and we need to actually figure it out ourselves, like going through logs that they don't report anything. I mean, like we've been like trying to understand, like the log level is like false equals true error. That's it. So you figure it out. And I actually chat with some people from the team, and they didn't actually knew how to give us any actually guidelines or anything. And I would say like probably if you want to continue, or we need to continue with this, we'll need someone from their team just to give us a hand in every single release, because probably it's actually a waste of development time. And it was like 3 engineers like working like 14 hours a day, or 16 or 18, or like like yesterday and this evening and this morning. Probably it's a waste of resources.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of agree with what Pedro was saying. We could probably just keep building the catalog image, but just not actually publish it to the upstream catalogs at all right now. Like that stuff's already there, right? And I don't think we've hit many issues at all with building our own catalog and using it that way. Is that a reasonable place? Seeing as most of the machinery for doing that stuff is already there, as far as I can tell. So we're not putting any additional burden on ourselves. We're just continuing to do what's already there, but not then adding the burden of trying to get it into these other catalogs. So then I suppose then it's a decision that we need to make about what way do we want to actually do the install as in the community, and then what's the promoted way versus like, hey, if you have OLM, there's a catalog image here and you could try using that, but we recommend that you use Customize or Helm or whatever, right? That's probably a choice that we need to make before. For now, we probably just obviously keep things as they are and keep building the catalog image, but let's maybe keep talking on chat about, like, I don't know a huge amount about Helm, but I do know a bit about Customize, but yeah, like maybe we could weigh up what we want to do there.
By the way, Agus, you want to give the good news? Go ahead.
You go.
Finally, it's merged. 071 in OLM is actually out there in OpenShift catalog, and hopefully it works. And the community ones, they were merged earlier today. We split the versions in 0.7.0 with Authorino 0.11.0, and then we needed to do another release of Kuadrant 0.7.1 with Authorino 0.11.1. And in OpenShift, that was actually another kind of odyssey. It's 0.7.1 with targeting Authorino 0.11.1, and kind of like change the way that we are constructing the update graph with same version instead of replaces.
Amazing. Okay, well, that's good news at the end. Let's stop this. We're already 2 minutes over time. It's gonna be next week. Your item. We didn't make that one.
He already dropped.
Okay. Right, he was too disappointed already. Okay, thanks everybody for your time and dedication. Take care.